Hello, I am Lulú Guerrero from the Center for Global Justice, and today we are going to talk about Mexico and the conflict in Palestine. The contents of this conversation are: number one, a brief review on history; number two, the Mexican government and the conflict; number three, other Latin American countries; number four, the United States; number five, the International Court of Justice; number six, South Africa; number seven, the Palestinian health officers; and finally, what do you think? A brief review on history. In 1917, Britain conquers Palestine from the Ottoman Turks after 1,400 years of Islamic rule over the region. Before this conquest, Jews represented 6% of the total population in Palestine. In 1947, after the World War II ended, the newly formed United Nations emitted Resolution 181 to grant 55% of Palestine to a Jewish state and 45% to a non-contiguous Arab state. This resolution never took place. In 1948, since 1948, West Jerusalem was Israeli territory. 354,000 Israelis were living there and 5,000 were Palestinians. Israel captured 78% of historic Palestine and expelled 750,000 Palestinians. For them, this was called the Nakba, or catastrophe. In 1967, during the June 1967 war, East Jerusalem was occupied by Israel. There were 236,600 Israeli settlers and 370,000 Palestinians. Gaza and the West Bank were occupied by Israel. 300,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes. In 1980, Israel declares the annexation of East Jerusalem. Under international law, this is an occupied territory. Palestinians want it as their future state's capital. In 1993 and 1995, the Oslo Accords were signed by Palestine Liberation Organization and Israel. The West Bank was divided into three areas, A, B, and C. These accords were set aside since Israel built more settlements in the West Bank, which are illegal under international law. So we have 600,000 to 750,000 Israeli settles in 290 outposts and settlements. In 2007, there's a blockade by Israel on Gaza after Hamas took power. Then in 2022, there are 645 fixed physical obstacles, 49 checkpoints constantly staffed by Israeli companies, and 139 occasionally staffed checkpoints in occupied West Bank. Sorry, I had a typo. It's companies when I'm talking about the checkpoints. On October 7, 2023, Hamas attacked Israel and at least 1,200 people were killed. On October 9, 2023, Israel imposes a total blockade, and the supplies that were cut are electricity, food, water, and fuel. The blockade of Gaza. The population of Gaza is 2.3 million people. It's one of the most densely populated areas in the world. The unemployment rate in Gaza is 45%. It's among the highest in the world. What's the area of Gaza? Gaza is 365 square kilometers. It has a similar size to Cape Town in South Africa, to Detroit in the US, and to Sheffield in Britain. The food insecure households is 64%. The West Bank and East Jerusalem has an area of 5,655 square kilometers. It's a similar size to Delaware in the United States and to Perth in Australia. Israel has a total area of 20,770 square kilometers, and it's similar to New Jersey in the United States. The military assaults by Israel on Gaza. In 2008 and 2009, those assaults lasted 23 days. In 2020, they lasted 8 days. In 2014, they lasted 50 days. In 2021, they lasted 11 days. And in 2023, they started on October 7th, and they are still going on. What are the human costs from 2008 to 2023? The Palestinian deaths are 21,510, and the Israeli deaths are 1,508. What's Mexico's stance on the conflict? Let's go back in time. Let's talk about Mexican history. In August 1975, President Luis Echeverría met with the head of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Yasser Arafat, in Cairo, Egypt. The Mexican government established diplomatic relations with the PLO and finally recognized the state of Palestine. Mexico has a Palestinian ambassador, Mohammed Sadat, and a representative in Ramallah. What was the Mexico's government press release? when this conflict started. Mexico is in favor of a comprehensive, definite two-state solution that addresses Israel's legitimate security concerns and allows for the consolidation of a politically and economically viable Palestinian state that lives side by side with Israel within secure and internationally recognized borders in accordance with the United Nations resolutions. True to the constitutional principle of the peaceful settlement of disputes, the government of Mexico expresses its readiness to accompany any effort to establish a lasting peace in the region based on mutual respect and full compliance with international law. What does the Mexican Constitution say about foreign policy when we are dealing with conflicts? We have three principles in the Constitution. The first one is non-intervention. The second one is peaceful solution of controversies. And the third one is self-determination of the peoples. What are two very important issues between Mexico and Israel? The first one is Tomás Herón. Tomás Herón worked during Enrique Peña Nieto's government, and in 2021, he was accused of the following crimes: torture, disappearance, forced disappearance, and robbery. The amount of that robbery is $84 million. The most important are the crimes of torture and disappearance. He was working in the government when 43 students disappeared from Ayotzinapa. And since that happened, this is still unsolved. This issue is still unsolved, but he was working to solve the case, and what happened is that he committed torture against different people to send them to jail and to make them responsible for the disappearance of the students. After he was accused, he flew to Israel, and he's still in Israel. He continues to be in liberty, and he hasn't come back to Mexico. The second case is Andrés Roemer. Andrés Roemer was an important person in Mexico because of his work. He worked in the United States representing Mexico at UNESCO. He had different TV shows where he talked about culture, and he was a very brilliant person. The problem with him is that in 2021, more than 10 women accused him of sexual abuse. This number grew to more than 60 cases. When this happened, he went to Israel, and he is still in Israel. So the Mexican government is demanding that both citizens should be extradited from Israel And Interpol is also looking for both men. We have one problem between Mexico and Israel. We don't have any extradition treaties. So this is blocking the solution of the problem. On the other hand, the Israeli government doesn't feel compelled to help Mexico, because when there's any resolution in the United Nations about Palestine, Israel would like that Mexico stood by their government, and Mexico has been always in favor of a Palestine state. What is happening with the public opinion in Mexico? Most Mexican citizens are in favor of a free Palestine. There have been massive demonstrations in Mexico City and in Guadalajara mainly to support Palestine. And the public opinion is demanding that Mexico's government should break diplomatic relations with Israel, because there is a genocide in Gaza and children and women are dying every day. Let's see how other countries in Latin America have reacted. We have in Latin America between 600,000 and 1 million Palestinians. Most of the governments in Latin America are in favor of a free Palestine. Let's talk about Colombia. In Colombia, President Gustavo Petro is the first left-wing president in Colombia, and he declared on October 9, 2023, concentration camps are strictly prohibited by international law, and those responsible for them can be charged with crimes against humanity. On October 13, he declared that Colombia would propose to the UN for Palestine to be accepted as a full member state. Colombia, Belize, and Chile recalled their ambassadors from Tel Aviv on October 31st after Israel bombed the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Bolivia decided to sever its diplomatic relations with Israel. Honduras recalled its ambassador from Tel Aviv on November 2nd. Argentina, this country, due to its large Jewish community, has been more restrained. And it condemned Israel bombings along with Mexico and Peru. Chile has the largest Palestinian community outside the Middle East. It's from 350,000 to 400 people. In the 1920s, Palestinian immigrants founded a soccer team in Chile called Club Deportivo Palestino to gain support from the public opinion. This is I think it's important to talk about this this kind of this way of looking for the solution of a conflict. for Palestinians, it's important for Palestinians in Chile. It's important that all the society knows about their struggle in the Middle East. So one of the ways of doing so was creating this soccer team. Chilean President Gabriel Boric has been very supportive for Palestinian human rights since his inauguration in 2022. Panama is the only country in Latin America that has not recognized the state of Palestine. Cuba and Venezuela do not have diplomatic relations with Israel. Cuba broke off relations with Israel in 1973 and sent troops to the Golan Heights to support Syrian forces during the Yom Kippur War. Cuba is the only country in Latin America to stand against the partition plan for Palestine in 1947 and to protest the dispossession of Palestinians. Since 1992, Israel has voted alongside the US against all United Nations General Assembly resolutions, condemning the US embargo on Cuba. On November 2nd, 2023, there were 187 countries that voted to lift the embargo. 2 voted against, the United States and Israel. 1 abstained, Ukraine. What happens with Venezuela? In 2009, former President Hugo Chavez severed ties with Israel after a year-long war in Gaza killed more than 1,000 Palestinians. He accused the Mossad of trying to kill him and Israel of financing the Venezuelan opposition. In 2019, when Juan Guaidó, an opponent politician, proclaimed himself as an interim president, Israel opened an embassy for him in Tel Aviv. Months later, the Venezuelan government accused a group of Israeli terrorists of complotting to kill President Nicolás Maduro. Brazil is more with this line to support the Western countries. Brazilian President Lula da Silva denounced Hamas terrorist attacks while looking for negotiations towards a two-state solution. Brazil is a candidate for a permanent seat in the Security Council in the UN, so that's important. That's important to be aware of. On October 25th, President Lula da Silva started to speak about a genocide against the Palestinians in front of the press. Now let's see what is going on with the United States. The US government does not look to Palestine as a priority. President Biden is with Israel since the October 7th attack, and he rushed additional military aid to Israel. And the US is exercising a veto to block a UN Security Council resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The progressive flank on the Democratic Party is questioning the support for Israel. On December 23rd, a poll from the New York Times found that 57% of respondents disapproved of Biden's handling of the conflict, and it rises to 72% among young voters, who were a key element in his victory over Trump. International observers have accused the US and the wider West of double standards to Russia's occupation of Ukraine and Israel's occupation of Palestine. So on one hand, the US points out at Russia of occupying Ukraine, but they don't point out at Israel of occupying Palestine. This conflict might cause a defeat to the Democrats in the upcoming elections. But on the other side, there have been massive demonstrations in the United States against this war and against this support from the US government to the Israeli government. So we can see that in many places of the world, the citizens are going out to show their support to stop this war and to help Palestinians get their freedom, but their governments, most of the times, don't act accordingly. Many of the Western governments are acting to stand with Israel and with the US and to support the sale of more armament to Israel. Now let's talk about the International Court of Justice. This is the United Nations body for resolving interstate disputes. South Africa filed a suit against Israel at the International Court of Justice in The Hague on December 29, 2023. In the 84-page suit, it details evidence of brutality being perpetrated in Gaza and asks the court to urgently declare that Israel has breached its responsibilities under international law since October 7th. South Africa recalled its ambassador from Israel, referring the suffering of Palestinians to the International Crime Court. The International Crime Court takes on cases of alleged crimes committed by individuals, not states. South Africa. What are South African allegations against Israel? South Africa has accused Israel of committing genocide in Gaza in violation of the 1948 Genocide Convention, which defines genocide as acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. Genocidal actions listed in the suit include the killing of Palestinians in Gaza in large number. At least 70% are women and children. The destruction of their homes, their expulsion and displacement, as well as enforcing a blockade on food, water, and medical assistance to the Strip. In the first 3 weeks following October 7th, Israel deployed 6,000 bombs per week. They include the imposition of measures preventing Palestinian births by destroying essential health services crucial for the survival of pregnant women and babies. All these actions are intended to bring about their destruction as a group. Israel's actions have pushed the Strip to the brink of famine. Israel has launched an assault on Palestinian culture by attacking sites of religion, education, art, science, historic monuments, hospitals, and places where the sick and wounded are collected. The ICJ fixed the hearing for January 11 and 12, as stated by Jason Mongiela. He's the spokesperson for South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation. Eilon Levy, the Israel's spokesperson, confirmed that Tel Aviv would defend itself at the Hague hearings. While any ruling by the ICJ may have little bearing on the war itself, a ruling in favor of South Africa and the Palestinians would pile significant pressure on the US government. The Palestinian health officials say that the death toll since October 2023 is 24,000 from October to January 2024. More than 10,000 children have died. 370 health care workers were killed. So, before closing this presentation, I would like you to reflect on this conflict, to think about this conflict. I was telling the audience 2 weeks ago here in San Miguel, I was telling them that it's so hard to listen about all these human losses, all these children dying, all these women dying. Here in Mexico, in one of the demonstrations, this person was saying that it's a war against children and women, because in the casualties, the numbers reflect that. Thinking about the history in terms of colonial heritage, it's also difficult for us who have lived in countries where we were a colony from a country in the West. So when we when our ancestors got that freedom, it has been very hard to work on justice for our peoples. It's been very difficult to work on that freedom. So when we see this kind of crimes against freedom, and when we see that Palestine is a colony and their citizens don't have the same rights as the rest of the people, it's difficult. In our center, that's one of the topics all the time: how to get justice for everyone, no matter what it's their ideology, what is their political point of view, no matter what it's their skin color. So this was part of the reflection 2 weeks ago. How to stop this genocide, how to stop the apartheid in Palestine, what we can do to stop it. And we support South Africa's suit against Israel. And we hope that this genocide ends soon, ends very soon. Because here where we live, here in Mexico, we would like that all the peoples or all the ethnical groups to have their rights, to have their freedom, to have justice in all the world. So tell us, what do you think? And thanks for watching, and please continue to support our job here in the Center for Global Justice. Thank you very much. I am Lulú Guerrero, and I'm very happy to share this talk, to share this conference with all of you. Goodbye.